Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Knowledge Group webcast, Accounts Payable, Automation for Your Business, Best Implementation Approaches. I'm David Jennings. I'll be your moderator for today's event. I want to take a moment to thank our participating sponsor, SAP Concur, and partner firm 360 Thought Leadership Consulting. Please visit their respective websites for additional information on the services they provide. A couple of housekeeping notes real quick. If want to let you know the Knowledge Group's Continuing Education Success Survey is underway. I'd like to hear from you to make sure we're investing your time wisely during webcasts. It's a quick 10-minute conversation with our publisher to help get your insights on what you value most in continuing education programs. Give us 10 minutes on the phone. We'll give you 3 months of free CLE CPE webcasts. You'll find a link in the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen that will be posted shortly where you can sign up and be part of that process. If you have not yet gotten your materials for the course, you will also find a link in the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen where that information will be available. Now to the members of our panel. Ryan Demery is Vice President of U.S. Small Business Sales at SAP Concur. He oversees U.S. small business sales for the small and mid-sized business organization for SAP Concur, a spend management technology company with more than 42,000 customers across 150 countries. A seasoned seller and industry leader, Ryan uses his deep background to provide SMBs with innovative solutions for travel, expense, invoice, compliance, and risk. He's passionate about helping SMBs stay in business longer and become more financially viable by giving them tools to proactively track and manage their spending. In his free time, Ryan co-owns and runs his own small business, a successful hazelnut farm, which delivers varietals to the global market. Ernie Humphrey is the CEO and founder of 360 Thought Leadership Consulting. Ernie is a proven strategy and financial professional with 20-plus years of experience. He has diverse industry knowledge as a seasoned corporate finance practitioner, a leader at the largest association for financial professionals, the AFP, and a driving force behind the development of the largest online community for senior-level financial professionals. During his career, he has supported and delivered thought leadership in the areas of finance, treasury, accounting, and related disciplines. He's had success in building consensus, embracing change, driving results through innovation, business development, and community building. I want to thank the members of our panel who've been generous with their help and support in preparing for today's event and being here to make the presentation today. So, right now, I'm going to turn things over to Ryan Demery and Ernie Humphrey. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. Starting with a question. So why is everybody paying attention to accounts payable now? What's happened in the last 5 or 10 years that makes this a focus for a lot of people's attention?
I'll start out here. This is Ernie Humphrey. I think there's been a growth in the tools and automations being used through finance departments. I think we really started to see this with the cloud-based ERP system, and now what we're starting to see is this is going to accounts payable. So I think there are really 2 big drivers. I think the drivers are technology and education. And I think technology has shown companies the value of having 20/20 visibility in the customer relationship. So we saw a lot of focus on customer relationship management, and companies realized this type of visibility could also add value to improving supplier relationship. And what visibility really does is it highlights areas that are clearly in need of improvement. The other pillar is going to be education, like the webinar that we're doing today. Once people see that AP can and should be more of a strategic function than a back office function, I think they pay attention. And companies of all sizes are realizing a huge ROI from investing in AP automation, and as other companies see that, AP is really starting to get the attention it deserves.
Yeah. This is Ryan Demery here. Thank you, David, for the opportunity to be here, and Ernie for the opening comments as well. And I couldn't agree more, right? The cloud ERP, the CRM, the wide availability of cloud technology today, and with my focus being specifically SMBs, those are usually fast adopters of the cloud technologies, and we've certainly seen that. But one thing I would say I would add to the list too, Ernie, is just the growth opportunity in today's market. We see organizations often, gearing up for growth and preparing for the next opportunity in their business. And as they've seen all of their other systems become available in cloud and the value that they get through, as you mentioned, CRM and ERP, and looking at ways that they can extend the value of those solutions or augment to them, AP becomes a very opportunistic place for that to happen, especially as you consider the growth opportunities. So I would say for the part that I've seen in our small business space, the growth opportunity has actually been a much bigger driver for us in seeing the innovation in accounts payable and finance departments today. But that connectivity of the systems is what's really making it viable more so now than ever. So in my opinion, it is, cloud, it's awareness, and the growth opportunities that people are trying to take advantage of today.
Oh, I agree completely. Let me go ahead and add a little bit more to that conversation, because I completely agree. And when I was in Treasury, I used to manage acquisition integrations, and accounts payable was often a tough part of that, right? So I think companies are seeing growth, whether that's changing their business conditions or on the acquisition integration page. One of the toughest things to do was to integrate that accounts payable piece. So I agree that that's really becoming a focus, and it's very important for folks to get their handle on accounts payable, and having that cloud-based solution really makes the integration of accounts payable easy to the acquiring company.
Yeah. Yep.
We know the why. Or let's talk about the what. What are some of the big things that you see companies tackling now?
Let me go ahead and jump in here first. I think what we've seen first from the visibility, at first the focus was more on reducing invoice processing costs, but now I'm seeing more companies getting suppliers on supplier portals to mitigate common supplier relationship issues, which include information asymmetry, inefficient methods of communication, the structure of the company in the ERP systems, and bank account information. But now I'm seeing more of a focus for companies taking control of how they pay suppliers, moving them from checks to electronic payments, and trying to optimize their payment portfolio, the mix of how they pay suppliers. And there are more and more companies out there trying to get companies to focus on getting their suppliers to pay with virtual cards that can possibly offer them rebates. So that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Well, Ernie, it's like we're reading from the same book sometimes, and I think we'll go back and forth on these all day here. The payment mix is by far, when I talk to our services team, our implementation teams, the opportunity to optimize the way in which the companies make their payments, move towards more digital strategies has been really important to them. And that's for a multitude of reasons. But the first among them, it just has to do with the security, right? A lot of them want to move away from putting themselves at potential risk of check fraud and using technology to do that in a digital way, and also to make those payments in a more digital way. I think that has been a huge lift for them. And I also think that, taking advantage of, these, shared marketplace, group purchasing organizations and things of that nature have been around for a long time. And one of the things that Concur has been passionate about is bringing those sort of strategies downstream as far as possible to SMBs, the power of many, helping them to gather themselves up together. And payment strategy actually has a large opportunity for that, whether it's negotiating with vendors or taking advantage of technologies that wouldn't normally be available that far down market. We've seen a tremendous appetite to move into that. And the other point that I wanted to make in this place too, as far as key initiatives, goes back to my first point about growth and something you talked about in acquisitions, and that's a move towards shared services and decentralized employees. And I put those two in the same kind of bucket because it has to do with maximizing the talent that you have and extending technology to meet their needs. So I'm going to absolutely echo your comments about the payment mix and maybe look at it a little bit differently from our side. but also shared services and how you use technology in those environments, and how you accommodate decentralized employees, providing them tools that still give them the ability to make spending decisions on behalf of the company and organization they work for without massive disruption to their core functions that they serve today. So I would add those to the list as well.
Ernie, you mentioned companies and their vendors wanting more visibility into the entire payment process. What's going to be the key initiative or key initiatives that are going to help businesses find success by doing it?
Okay, I'll take the lead here. Again, I'll try not to steal too much of Ryan's thunder. I'm pretty good at that sometimes, so sorry about that. So, so part of the visibility is due to the integrability of the systems, as Ryan mentioned. So what you're going to do in looking at the visibility, so your AP automation solution is definitely going to help you, but you're going to have connectivity into your ERP system, possibly, or maybe a treasury management system on the payment side. So part of that visibility is going to be on the systems integrability side. So from the supplier perspective, what we want to do is we want to give them visibility into what is owed, because there's a lot of time that's spent on disputes. I've seen studies where people spend 5 to 8 hours a day managing supplier disputes, so we can do away with a lot of that by having on these supplier portals especially, they asymmetry of information, what's owed, what's not owed, what are the payment terms, that real-time communication, that's very much good for the ease of doing business. And on the internal side, what we want to do is we want to be able to look at key bottleneck points in the accounts payable process, and we can start to put metrics around there. So we want visibility internally on how things are flowing, and we want to have visibility that we can offer our suppliers normally through supplier portals, and they can also manage their bank account information and company structure as well. So I think what we're doing a lot is the visibility is removing some friction from the accounts payable process.
Yeah. And Ernie, don't worry about stealing thunder. I'm sure I'll have an opportunity to get in here and leave one of these in just a moment. But I'll add just a different lens here too. SAP Concur, we do have a tremendous footprint with accounts payable automation. But other accounting functions that we perform with regard to some internal vendors, like their employees. Some companies still, list their employees as vendors, and how they deal with their expense reports and corporate cards. And you're talking about the visibility of these payments, and I think just the reconciliation of that, and how you're able to make these systems work together to create that visibility where vendor, end user, employee, and everybody within the chain has understanding into that process, whether it's your employee or vendor. It's critical to use technology to reduce, kind of the data entry style points that allow for miskeying or issues that create that duplicity, or that create that missed opportunity to take the early payment discount because the keystroke was wrong. I think that is something that we've seen companies find tremendous success in, is using technology for that to drive the reconciliation and the strong understanding across them. And one other thing I would put into this place as well is, you talked about, strategic relationships and supplier focus. And I've, listed out there in my biography that I, own and operate a small business, but my brother does as well. And, he came to me with a story about one of his vendors reaching out to him about an invoice that he had sent, that why he had changed his banking information and why they needed to wire funds into a different account, why he needed so much money so fast. And at the end of the day, it turned out it was a phishing scheme. It was a fraud that somebody was trying to defraud, not his company, but the vendor. And, just making him aware that, this is a pretty typical scam and scheme that happens. And, that sort of disruption in small and medium-sized businesses and the lack of awareness to technology to do that, being able to manage those relationships with suppliers to stop those sort of things from happening, where technology would have put a block in place versus a phone call. I mean, thank goodness they had the relationship to stop that. Those are the sort of things that we think will drive the visibility will help drive success through all this change, right? It's the tangible improvement of business there is something we see is a big factor.
Ryan, since you mentioned that story with your brother, it brings a thought to my mind, which is, what do you say to people who have heard all the stories about data breaches, et cetera? How do you make them feel comfortable with the idea of trusting more of their business function to a computer network, and particularly something that is not on their premises, something that is based in the cloud?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one I think people have really struggled with, how to answer it appropriately, because it's a security situation. And the point that I would lend in this, if it was somebody who was talking to myself or SAP Concur about our services, is that, one of the benefits of partnering with a supplier like SAP Concur or another vendor of technology is, we are a large organization with contracts that have certain obligations that require us to protect your information in certain ways. We maintain these security certificates. We have testing that's done in our databases on a constant and regular basis. And actually having an organization like SAP Concur involved in your business at these critical intersections of security as a validation point actually creates a lot more accounting control and opportunity for you. Whereas before, if it's just, I know we have some individuals who may be CPAs on this phone, and if you're just having conversations and making decisions without, audit trails or technology to assist in that, it comes down to the people that are held responsible for that, and not the technology and the legal obligations and insurances that are for that. And so I would invite you to have a further conversation with us, and we can provide you with all the security documents to make you aware of, what our liability insurances are, how much we can, protect you against in those situations, as they are very specific. Now, they're written in legalese, so I can't pretend to make them easy to read, but they are there and very distinct in what they protect against.
Brian, a lot of people are also now talking these days about artificial intelligence, or AI for short. How has that changed, and how is it changing finance departments and specifically accounts payable?
Yeah. Well, the artificial intelligence and machine learning they're phenomenal buzzwords. And being from somebody who works in technology, I think that we see a lot of buzzwords come and go. And I think the reason why AI and machine learning are sticking is because it's not about the technology itself. It's about what it can do. It's about spotting patterns and information that wouldn't readily be seen unless you were able to crunch massive amounts of number and information. And there's just not that many people that are out there in the world that have that skill set. And secondarily, it's very expensive to have these server farms that are required to run this sort of information to get the output. But at the end of the day, machine learning is this. You dump a lot of information into a system, and you ask it a question, and it's going to sift through it and give you an answer. And why we're seeing it have so much impact for things like accounts payable is, and especially, as I said, in the small business, you can tell a theme here, I'm very focused and passionate about helping small businesses, is a lot of times the information that's available to them is somewhat of a small sample set, and it's very well known to them. What they oftentimes need, and as we go through our user summits that we host all over the country, is companies coming up to us and wanting to know, what are my peers doing? What are the others that are excelling in our industries and geographical locations doing to get ahead? What does their spending look like? Who are their vendors? How are they managing this? And being able to have this sort of information to provide them the insights to go in and say, you may have a list of, let's say, 500 vendors that you work with, but did you know that 30 of those vendors are also in relationships with people similar to you, and those individuals have different or better terms than them? There's an opportunity for you to use that data and information to help these small businesses manage their relationships and take control of their business through data that does sit within their business, but also from without it. One of the huge benefits that Concur has is our data. and how we're able to use and leverage that for small businesses has been somewhat the driver for the opportunity exploding at SAP Concur in the accounts payable department for our small businesses.
Ernie, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, thank you very much. So what I'm seeing in finance right now is I'm seeing more AI in the accounts receivable space right now. So what we're seeing is more vendors in this space, and I think it's really obviously started with the enterprise-sized companies, but they're able to identify patterns, help folks craft the right messaging, put the rules there. So I think that we're starting to see the value there, and I think once companies see that AR success, they'll be more open to how it applies to accounts payable, and I think especially in terms of mitigating fraud exposures. So myself, I consider T&E internal accounts payable. So I think we're seeing some AI on that side of it to detect fraud. So I think in finance, we're starting in accounts receivable. We'll see some success there, and then I think we'll start to see that spill over into the accounts payable space again. I think especially in terms of mitigating those fraud exposures that we have. So even though you have some of the tools that help you examine a certain amount, right, of the invoices and audit those, this AI allows you to look at every single invoice, and that's something that's just not feasible in doing that in a manual case, and they're finding ROI from those things.
Let me take a moment to get let me just take one quick moment to get our first secret word in, and that word is automation, A-U-T-O-M-A-T-I-O-N. That is automation. Ryan, I'm sorry.
Oh, by no means no need to apologize, David. That's part of the program. One of the things that hearing Ernie talk and talking about that, accounts payable for expense reports, Concur definitely, that's the place we have a strong opinion. But it brought to mind something that I thought was extremely valuable, and that's, the availability of OCR. OCR has been around for quite some time, document management and things of that nature. But, as we're able to capture more information sooner in the process for accounts payable, using OCR to get that information in, and then as Ernie mentioned, using these tools to extract that data and take it down another level deeper to get to things that you wouldn't ordinarily see, like, this vendor may not necessarily be categorized correctly. You might have been labeling them as let's just say office supplies, where in reality it might be something entirely different in their level 3 data. And so I would say that, in addition to, just the availability for small and medium-sized businesses, that OCR being available to capture that information much sooner in the process and get control of it before something is actually paid, so you can do the analysis and use machine learning prior to making payments, has been something that is extremely exciting as well. So thank you.
Let's move on to slide 11, and we'll shift gears just a little bit. With all the discussion about automating your accounts payable, for a business, Ryan, what does it actually mean when I automate my accounts payable?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one I think that could be answered in a lot of different ways. But I'm going to go back to my focus on small and medium-sized business here for a moment. I think, and knowing that we're talking to CPAs and others, and I think what a lot of times what people think it means is that if I automate AP, I'm going to be losing a key function of what I do today, where I add value. And I want to be very clear in talking to the people on this phone and making it that our viewpoint is not that. Automation does not mean that we're taking a key part of the value-added services and experience that you bring to the department or the organization that you work with, or the firm that you use to support other small and medium-sized businesses. Automation gives you the ability to focus on what matters most for those organizations. Automation takes the parts of this process, that are repeatable, systematic, and known quantities, and takes those off the plate and puts you in a position to drive strategic initiatives, do things like vendor analysis, spend management, look towards a different procurement strategy, and in general, focus your time where you can have a greater impact on your organization. And so, it's a roundabout way of saying automation to me means focusing your skills where they matter most and giving you the opportunity to manage those better.
Ernie?
Okay, thank you very much, and I completely agree. So this one I'll be a little bit brief, and first of all, I echo that. So the first thing that came to mind is it means impacting the productivity of all employees involved in accounts payable. So one of the things that companies absolutely need to do if they don't have this, you should map out the accounts payable process from A to Z, look at all the people, processes, and systems involved, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. You want to make sure you know how much it costs to process the invoice. And what you'll see is that there are many departments impacted outside of what would be considered traditional accounts payable, so that impacts the productivity of all those individuals, so that's really key. And as Ryan said, it's all about letting people focus on value-add activities instead of just trying to reduce that headcount. And it also empowers better supplier relationships, and you really need to have these relationships in place, and that allows you to take more control of how you pay. So if there's checks, you want to make sure, how do we get that on an electronic payment, ACH, or a card payment? We need to have that good relationship, and also take control of when we pay suppliers. So we have to be able to process our invoices efficiently so we can take advantage of those discounts and look at some dynamic discounting. So there's the productivity impacts, and then there's the cost savings impact, and all these things really impact the bottom line, which you really wouldn't think was possible from accounts payable even maybe 10 years ago.
You both mentioned visibility as being a key factor in all of this. What are some of the ways that automation improves your ability to see what's going on?
Yeah, let me go ahead and start off on that one since I'm the visibility guy. I always talk about this 20/20 visibility, and I think I've mentioned these things earlier, but I think the visibility, it obviously often goes hand in hand with the reporting. So reporting can mean many things, but just the process reporting, the process efficiency. So I think that is where it can really add value in identifying places where you can make improvements. And then automation delivers visibility into the processes and into the supplier relationship. So anything that gives us more visibility, 360 visibility, to understand how we're communicating with suppliers, why, and control that messaging is key. At the end of the day, the bottom line is it allows companies to identify pain points, areas of improvement in terms of people, process, and technology.
Yeah. So I look at this automation improve visibility. You know, I look at this in a few different ways, but one of the lenses that you can put on this for an organization, and since we're talking AP automation, people will fully understand this, is the direct or indirect or PO and non-PO, because I think the way AP automation touches those segments are differently. So I'm going to talk about in terms of non-PO or PO-based processes. And I think, you know, for non-PO-based invoices, automation improves visibility. SAP concurs specifically because of the way that we get those invoices into the system quickly. You know, the way in which we aid companies in capturing that information, using OCR, you know, to gain visibility into the obligations or opportunities, depending upon how you look at it. The minute it hits your desk, right? You're not waiting for a person to key that in. It's not sitting on someone's physical desk. It's not sitting in their inbox. You know, Ernie's talked a lot about vendor relationships, but this is the vendor sending that information in and gaining visibility to that, you know, immediately. And having that information in place, you know, cash flow management is very important for small and medium-sized businesses. How you're managing your accounts receivable, how you're viewing your accounts payable and when those are due, measuring that against your cash on hand, your debt obligations, your opportunities for growth. That's critically important, and a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, they don't have a lot of PO processes in place today. So helping them gain visibility into that immediately is important. But to move into the second part of the conversation for POs, helping organizations to take control of the spend before it happens, right? Which isn't the name of the question here, but I'll get to my point about it is once you do help organizations move into a place where they can start to issue POs or take advantage of them, they need to have that understanding about what is left outstanding or unaccrued on their POs. When is it due to come in? And do they have any invoices that are sitting in their queue against that they need to push through in a certain budgetary period to manage against certain budget thresholds, manage that cash flow more clearly? And so I think automation definitely has an impact on non-PO invoices and how small and medium-sized organizations take advantage of that, how they push critical vendors towards more POs, and then how they use that system to measure against and look at their obligations and opportunities as it pertains to those unaccrued invoices or those accrued invoices that sit against POs. So I think that those are very critical. And the other thing I would say is, Ernie touched on reporting, is that benchmarking, understanding when you have, opportunities that are periods of time that are very expensive. We see that usually being actually in the September month, we see a huge spike of invoices being processed through our platform. We also see that, the duplicate number of invoices also spiked at that very same time. So having controls in place to help manage that are very important for those reasons.
Are you seeing automation right now helping companies grow?
Yeah, Ernie, I'd like to jump in here first. I think absolutely. I talked about when we opened this question, organizations thinking about, what does automation mean and how it doesn't mean, sacrificing headcount or critical jobs that they have. I think that the ability to scale through technology, we have, lots of customer stories that we've spoken to, specifically whose names I don't have them all under NDA on memory, so I don't want to reference them all specifically, but where they've seen massive and rapid growth, and controlling margins has been the name of the game for them. And so that has to do with how headcount has been managed, how acquisitions have been successful by integrating those organizations they've had to acquire to make those growth, how they've been able to look inside at their data and find opportunities for vendor management to extract more money out of, to use towards growth initiatives. And another example I would give towards that is the payment strategies. Being able to take advantage of different payment strategies to create actual cash flow through your accounts payable department to inject revenue back into your organization. I think all of these are very clear examples where our customers have come back to us and said, SAP Concur and their AP automation tool have been able to help us grow and do so quickly to take advantage of market opportunities. So I feel very confident saying, yes, it can.
Ernie?
Yeah, before I address that, I want to take just a step back and talk about the automation improving visibility. And Orion made a great point, which I missed. Shame on me, I'm a Treasury professional by trade. So like Ryan mentioned, the ability to control, but also to forecast cash and get more control of working capital management, that is certainly an area that offers tremendous value. And of course, Ryan's actually opened my eyes to how that can really help fuel the company growth. My plan has just always been a little bit more of automation supporting company growth and allowing companies to grow efficiently without disrupting sales and other operations. And believe me, it can, because I've gone through a lot of acquisition integration. And I think one of the things which we've hit on multiple times, but I think it's a key how automation allows employees within and outside of AP to focus on the value add activities and be more focused on, especially on the integration, how do we integrate the company, and then as Ryan said, take care of opportunities. The flow of cash is absolutely important.
All right, let's go to slide 12 now. So if I'm thinking about taking the plunge into automating my accounts payable, what are some of the factors that I need to consider before I sign on the dotted line and bring in a company like SAP Concur to help?
Yeah, if I could, I'll lead off here. You know, I think any sort of change in an organization, there is always more than just the technology in place, right? There's people to take in to consideration for that as well. And so the most successful implementations that we see for the customers that we're working with, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into that. You know, obviously we're speaking to some individuals who may help customers in this capacity as kind of value-added resellers of other services or subject matter expertise. So I think working with professionals to take a look at that is always very critical to say, you know, how might this technology work with other solutions that I have in place today? I think it's critically important. You know, Ernie talked about Cloud ERP at the very beginning of this, and I talked about, you know, the connectivity amongst those services. And I think it's really, really important to take into consideration what is the technology I have today, what are my objectives I'm trying to achieve, what are the people that I have in place, what are their experiences with this technology or other technologies, and really the why. What am I going to try to get out of this? You know, most companies will start with the efficiency game, and that's where we start too. But I think that there's so much opportunity here that, you know, the opportunity is to start with the end in mind, build a big picture for what that looks like, and then take some very small bites to get you there. You know, I'm in sales, so I got like one-liners of, you know, you can't eat the elephant all in one bite, and you can't boil the ocean. And I think that those are very critical factors to consider before automating, which is, you know, why are you doing this? What are the systems in place? Who are the people that you have to surround you, whether it's, you know, value-added consultants like the people who may be on the phone with us today, or people within your organization who have expertise. And I would say those are the key places to start before automating.
Ernie?
Great. I agree. I agree that getting staff on board early is very important. One of the things that I think gets lost, this means you need to create and be able to communicate an effective business case. You need to get support from those who will be impacted, who will drive the success of your project, in addition to those who control the purse strings. So there are several kind of key factors to making a good business case, and I think we have time. I'm going to go over just a few of those. Just because I see so many projects get left on the table because they're not communicated effectively and they're not sold effectively. And one of the things that I like to tell people is if there is someone that's going to be the biggest obstacle to your project, Mr. or Mrs. No, you want to get them on board immediately. So you want to involve those folks in your process. In terms of the case itself, key things, the executive summary, this is where you set the table for success or failure for your proposed projects. I tell people to throw out the biggest objections you'll find and disarm those folks right away. You got to have a solid problem statement. What are the issues and what are the consequences of not addressing them? Got to know the lay of the land, the root causes of the issues that you might have, and the root cause of the opportunities. You want to have a solid cost-benefit analysis. That's your case. And this is in presenting it. You got to know your constituency. Those are going to be impacted and those that control your purse string. You got to present with confidence and passion. You got to define the project roles and responsibilities. You need to establish accountabilities with each stakeholder, not only in implementation, but what goes forward. And also you need to define success. You need to stress your project benchmarks of success, have those up front, and you need to understand how you will communicate those to executives and those involved on an ongoing basis. Sorry, but I really think this business case is tremendously important, and it's really a key foundation of success.
Phenomenal point, Ernie. Shame on me for not bringing that up. That's, you know, considering that that's, you know, SAP Concur being a vendor helping companies understand how to buy the technology. I couldn't agree with you more. I think a lot of people understand what they want to get out of things. They may not understand how to get it done. And I think that that's a tremendous call out of, you know, building a very purposeful presentation, document, whatever it is, that you're able to communicate clearly within your organization to have everyone line up on those goals is mission critical. So I couldn't agree more, and very well put. Thank you for the examples.
Okay. What do you do when you have existing tools that you're already using, like QuickBooks as an example, or other generally commonly used financial tools? What do you tell them? How do you, what do you tell them? You know, can I continue to use this if I work with you? Is there a way to keep this stuff? Because, I mean, I don't want to have to go back and reformat everything to fit you.
Yes. So I'm extremely passionate about this. I kind of started touching on this up above before, but you always have to start with what you have today. You know, as I've, banged the drum with small, medium-sized businesses here quite a bit today, I think that, change management is hard, but also purse strings are tight. You want to be able to maximize, the investments that you've made today to stretch those to the point that they can, but also recognize that there may be times where those fail to meet your needs. And that's really where you want to make the investments within your business. I like to use the analogy where you can have a 1 + 1 = 3. And that's often what we find with these cloud-based technologies is the ability for them to have this connectivity where SAP's Concur's strong suits may be in the capture and the process of the payment of an invoice. You also need to be able to get that information over and into those systems. And so finding existing systems, evaluating where their gaps may be, and then finding ways to augment those. And it's not just ERPs, but it's also your CRM systems. You may have a PO system in place today or an inventory management system. It is not about your existing ERP. It's about the tools that you use to run your business. And the good news is today, cloud-based technology have the APIs or the ability to import files and do that through FTPs and different technology fronts to not put people in the middle of those transactions. And I think that's another key component of that evaluation as well.
At the end of the day, what should I expect from this integration process? How much of a headache am I going to have when it's all said and done?
Yeah. I think that this is an old saying. I like a stitch in time saves you none. I think if you start out with the right plan in place, you go through and you scope out the needs of your organizations, you look at your existing systems, you map out the goals and strategies you're trying to employ. Integration is not difficult. There are a lot of great companies out there who can help you with the integration if you don't have the expertise, is another point that I would make there. If this is not something you feel confident in, there's a whole ecosystem of systems integrators out there that can help you with this part in particular. And the time that you save by making these calculations up front before you end up with a mess on your hands is absolutely worth it. And to be clear, they're not super expensive options either. They need to be accounted for up front. So I would say the integration is not difficult as long as it's addressed. If you're somebody who just assumes that you're going to turn it on and that the systems connect, that does happen to some degree, but you need to understand what that connection looks like and be prepared to pay attention to it. As simple as that. Don't make any assumptions. Take it as a step within your evaluation. Make sure you ask the questions on how these files will move or connect. Is it a bi-directional sort of information? What APIs are available? These are questions that any software vendor that you're dealing with, should be able to answer readily. And if they can't give you the right information because your skill set doesn't match, they can introduce individuals. But the integration should not be the reason why your project doesn't succeed, as long as you go through and take the time to address it.
Our next secret word is account, A-C-C-O-U-N-T, that is account. Let's go to slide 13. And the big question is, what's the best implementation approach when it comes to automating my accounts payable, Ryan?
Yeah, so I think that the point that I would like to make here is, we often see a lot of businesses want to go big bang, right? They want to buy the software, You know, they've got an ROI that they're expecting to get out of this, and they think that they need to move all of their invoices over immediately and get them moved over. My approach would be a little bit differently. I would say that, you know, start with a smaller subset, maybe a specific department, a key group of vendors that you want to manage specifically, and start with that. You know, move through your implementation as if you will roll it out in a big bang style. But then as you get to the initial rollout and the initial phase of testing, my recommendation would be that you start a little bit smaller with that and make sure that you've got it down pat before you move on to anything else.
Ernie?
I would absolutely agree on that, the implementation approach. And what really determines the time the company should expect to take is two big factors. One is, are you ready internally to do so? So you have to have everybody on board to do that. And then how much support do you get from your chosen partner? So, for example, if your chosen partner was SAP and Concur, I'm sure they would walk you through the process, make it as easy as possible, you know, help you train your employees, have that formal training, but you have to have certain things kind of cleaned up. So what I always say is there's going to be inherent barriers to success. So before you implement the technology, I suggest you identify these inherent barriers in terms of people, process, and technology and kind of mitigate those up front. So the company, you have to be ready for the implementation, and you have to have a strategy in place, and then you have to really look for a partner that's going to engage with you, and you want to really set the metrics of how long is this going to take, you know, and really lay that out. And so what is that? You have to define success and then really hold folks accountable, but give them the resources to make that happen. So again, you have to have your house in order, and you really want to look to that solution provider. And then if you're really, really confused, this is more for enterprise-size company, you might want to bring in a consultant, but I think with what we see in the SMB space and these fantastic solutions that I see, I'm technology agnostic, I know them all, but companies like SAP, Concur, they have great support for implementation, so I don't think it's going to be as onerous as companies think it's going to be, so I would definitely not let that stop me from moving forward or taking a good look at how to improve my accounts payable function value.
And since I've got you here, Ernie, now you've got the thing started, how do you know it's working? What are the indicators that you're looking at that tell you this is going the way I want it to? This is the way it's going the way my outside consulting firm here that's helping me, they said it was going to work this way, it's working.
Well, I think you have to metrics of success. I would call those key performance indicators or KPIs. But the first thing is you have to have visibility into those KPIs, so you have to see where you're at, right, before where you want to go. So some of the AP KPIs that I recommend, I mentioned, cost to process, single invoice, that's huge. When you look at research and see how much that costs, you'll probably fall to your chair. It really depends on industries, but I've seen it for certain industries. I've seen the median $20, $30, $40. I think companies are getting better, and then you see where you're at, where you want to go. You want to look at the time to process a single invoice, because that allows you to take advantage of discount opportunities and also take advantage of those. You want to look at your invoice exception rate. What was it before we started? What's our goal? The time our folks spend resolving disputes. You want to look at things like percentage of invoices straight through process, percentage of invoices linked to POs, and I talk about the payments optimization. I want to see where I'm at in terms of percentage of payments received by checks. Where do I want to be? Percentage of payments that are received by ACH. Where am I at where I want to be? Percentage of payments that are received by card payments. Where am I at? Where do I want to be? But again, we have to make sure that we have that visibility in place, and that may require that you implement some technology in order to get yourself there.
Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, you know, Ernie, as usual, insightful. Yeah, it's been a great conversation. A lot of key performance indicators he rattled off there, and I think, a lot of companies start with, just the cycle times. That's their earliest indicator of, is the technology aiding me? Because that cycle time tells you how much time you're able to free up, right? So, an example would be, can I move my days to key an invoice from receipt to approval down to 2 days? Or can I get my receipt to approve down to less than 5? I think that, once you get the information into a system and approve, that gives you the ability to take control of all the payments and other KPIs that Ernie talked about. So my recommendation is start with, the time to approve, getting those in line, and then start to look at optimizing those actual payment terms. A lot of small and medium-sized businesses, discounts aren't always available to them based on how much money they spend with them, and so they're trying to extend their DPO as much as possible, the days payable outstanding, without going over, right? So can I extend my DPO while also reducing the amount of late fees that I have? That's usually a great dance that we like to help our organizations that we partner with do. And then also just the duplicate invoices. I can't say enough how important that is. Once a small, medium-sized business spends that money with a vendor, trying to get it back is like an act of Congress sometimes. And so reducing duplicate invoices is a big one. So, but Ernie covered off on a lot of key ones, and I think that they're absolutely spot on. There's a lot of KPIs that you can measure in this space. Reporting is robust, and we'll usually give you insight into those. But you have to start with the end in mind and know what you're working towards, and we can help you just figure out if it's working through the data for sure.
Our third secret word is vendor, V-E-N-D-O-R. Again, that is vendor. Why don't we just do it this way? Let's go to the key takeaways. And I'll include in the key takeaways this question for both of you. Any last words of advice for anyone who is on the call with us now, who is nodding their head going, maybe this is a good idea. Maybe I should automate my accounts payable. What words of advice would you give them? What to expect? What things they may have to change? And Ernie, I'll start with you.
Thank you very much. The first thing I would say is you really need to look into it no matter what size company you are. So you have to look at it as a little bit longer term. So it's going to have ROI to you to start with, but look at how you're going to grow and change, as Ryan mentioned so eloquently. It can help you grow your company. So one is don't be afraid of any of the myths out there. This isn't hype. Believe me, I would say if it is, I often think things are hype, but accounts payable automation has a tremendous ROI. So you want to look at all the pillars of the value proposition that it may have for your company, right? So again, I look at a couple key areas. One is invoice processing costs. How much does it cost you to process an invoice? What's the timing? How can you improve your working capital management? And then thirdly, how can I optimize my payments mix and get that value from controlling the type of payments that I receive? So I think you want to understand the pillars of that value proposition, and I would encourage folks to go to SAP Concur. They've got some great thought leadership there, some white papers, case studies. Find a company that fits yours in industry. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. See what they've done, how they've done it. But finally, I would say you have to make and communicate that business case, and I think that's what I would encourage people, and there's examples of that out there as well. So thank you very much, and I'll let Ryan add his thoughts here.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Ernie, and I'm sure we'll do everything we can to continue to earn that reputation. So in addition to what Ernie had said there, I would say one of the things that I like to tell companies is when you're going through this, let's define the needs, let's have the business case, let's do all these things that are super important to the business, let's get the efficiencies. But as you move through this process, don't look to automate a current process, or what we may some say is a suboptimal process. Really look at the end in mind and say, what are we trying to achieve? And then let's take the best practices. Let's look at some recommendations, let's challenge the norms, and let's look at what we can do to really take advantage of all of the things that are available to us and plan for that change in the future. You know, we here at SAP Concur are extremely passionate about 3 key pillars in our business right now, and that for SMBs, and that is, you know, the power of many. How are we able to take all of these small and medium-sized businesses that we partner with and use the data, the insights, and the information to bring technology to these groups that they wouldn't normally have access to bring strategies and insights to help them, you know, manage their business in new ways that you know, creates an opportunity for them. The other thing is to see the unseen, because we do work with so many organizations and we have had an opportunity to work with them from when they were very small to very large. You know, we think it's really important to take an opportunity to see the things that other organizations like yourselves who've gone before you have already been through and learn from those mistakes, so you either don't have to make them or don't make them for as long. And ultimately, the power of those 2 will help those organizations accelerate and grow. We are passionate that AP automation and taking control of all of the dollars that leave your organization do represent a significant opportunity for you to accelerate and grow these organizations, to work on key initiatives and take control of those dollars and use them in the most efficient ways possible. So I'll thank Ernie and David. Thank you for the time. Yes.
For both of you, I want to ask one more thing, and that is, how far down the road should you be thinking when you're looking at automating your AP systems?
I'll start off here. I would say there should be a 90-day goal, which is to say, how soon do you want to be up and live and using the system, and what is the value you need to get immediately. The next benchmark out would be a 12-month benchmark, after which point in time. And then I would say that there's really a 3-year window after that. So I'd say 3 months, 12 months, and 3 years is how I would look to evaluate the success of a solution.
Ernie Humphrey.
Yes, and I would add, as far as your business growth is concerned, I would take a look at, you know, where you see yourself, you know, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Are you going to experience, you know, a hyper growth period? Are you going to flatten out? But I would always say you might want to start small, then you might want to phase your project out. But in my opinion, every company should have the goal of delivering world-class accounts payable, because the technology is out there and it's not cost prohibitive as your business grows. So there's no longer competitive advantage to accounts payable unless you're not doing it. So you can actually be left behind in terms of accounts payable. So I would say, you know, look to where your business is going, and if you're going to err on the side, maybe not having everything turned off right away, but your business can grow into that functionality and drive that ROI. So it's a lot easier to do that rather than to buy a company that's larger than yours or half as big, and then all of a sudden you have all these problems where if you already had these AP solutions in place, things with your life and your company's life would be a lot easier.
Our thanks to Ryan Demaray, Vice President of U.S. Small Business Sales at SAP Concur, and Ernie Humphrey, CEO and founder of 360 Thought Leadership Consulting. Thank you, attendees, for taking some time out of your busy schedules to join us today. If you're applying for continuing education credits, filling out that survey is mandatory per your state boards and bars, and we're required to keep a completed survey from you. If you would like to get some free CE credits, share your insights with us. We're doing a continuing education success survey to improve the knowledge group and better serve you. Give us 10 minutes on the phone. We'll give you 3 months of free CE webcast. You'll find a link where you can do that in the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen. If you requested a recording of today's event and or a certificate of attendance, you'll get the relevant information by email in the next 24 to 48 hours. You can follow us on Twitter @no_group. Get updates not only on this event, but other news and important information. This concludes our event, Accounts Payable Automation for Your Business, Best Implementation Approaches. If you've got a question for Ryan Demaray or for Ernie Humphrey, you can send an email to us, info@theknowledgegroup.org, and we'll pass the information on to them.